A researcher at Brandeis University holds up a small piece of green wool. She looks at the parrot on the perch in front of her and asks, "What color?" The parrot looks at the wool, looks at her, and says, "Green." She holds up a blue wooden block. "What shape?" "Four-corner." She holds up an apple, something he has never been tested on before. He looks at it, thinks, and says, "Banerry." Not apple. Not a word she had taught him. Banerry. Because the outside looked like a cherry, and the inside looked like a banana. He made a new word. On his own. For something he had never seen before. That parrot's name was Alex. His brain was the size of a walnut. And in 30 years of research, he did things that scientists said were impossible, not just for a bird, but for any non-human animal. We're going to come back to Alex in a bit. But first, I need to tell you what is actually happening when a parrot speaks. Because it is not what you think. And it is not what most of the internet is going to tell you. If you Google "do parrots understand what they say?" you'll get two kinds of answers. Half the pages say, "Yes, absolutely. Parrots are incredibly intelligent. They understand everything." The other half say, "No. It's all mimicry. They're just copying sounds. There's nothing going on upstairs." Both answers are wrong. And both skip the interesting part. Because the real question isn't do they understand or not. The real question is, what kind of understanding are we even talking about? And the answer to that, the actual answer from decades of research, is genuinely one of the strangest things I've come across. You felt this, right? Your parrot says something, and it's not random. It fits. You walk into the kitchen and they say, "Want some?" You come home, and they say your name. You get upset about something and they go quiet, or they come over and sit close. And you think, they know. But then you also think, do they? Or am I just reading into it? That feeling, that uncertainty, is actually the most honest response you can have. Because the scientists who spent their careers studying this had the exact same uncertainty. And they designed experiments specifically to answer it. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what is happening. The actual machinery. And I think it's going to change the way you listen to your bird. So what's actually happening when a parrot speaks? First, the obvious part. Parrots are vocal learners. They hear a sound and they reproduce it. Their vocal anatomy is different from ours. They use a structure called a syrinx instead of a larynx. But the result is the same. They can produce human speech sounds with extraordinary accuracy. But here's where it gets interesting. For most of the 20th century, scientists believed that what parrots were doing was pure operant conditioning, which in plain English means they learned that making a certain sound gets them a reward, food, attention, a reaction from you. And so they keep making it. No meaning attached. Just a very sophisticated version of pressing a button. That was the consensus. For decades. And then a researcher named Irene Pepperberg walked into a pet store in 1977, bought a 1-year-old African gray parrot, named him Alex, short for avian learning experiment, and spent the next 30 years proving that consensus wrong. Here's what made Pepperberg's work different. Before her, researchers had tried to teach parrots to speak, and failed to show comprehension, using standard training methods. You show the bird a red ball, you say red, you reward them when they say red. But what you can't tell from that is whether the bird understands red or has simply learned that making that specific sound near that specific object gets them a treat. Pepperberg's insight was this. To prove comprehension, she needed to test Alex in situations he hadn't been trained on specifically. So she would take an object, say, a small green wooden triangle, and ask him questions he hadn't rehearsed. Not "what is this?" with a trained answer. But what color is it? And then with a different object, what shape? And then, how many? Mixed questions. New combinations. Novel objects. Alex's accuracy across hundreds of these trials was between 67 and 80%. Think about what that means. He wasn't recalling a memorized response. He was pulling the right label, color, shape, material, number, from a set of concepts he understood and applying it to a new object he'd never been specifically trained on. And the errors he made? They were consistent. He confused similar colors. He gave the wrong label for one category but the right label for another. The same kinds of errors a young child makes when they're still learning. Not random noise, not chance. Pattern.The. Pepperberg didn't claim Alex was using language the way you and I do. She was careful about that. She said he was using a two-way communication code. Something between pure conditioning and full human language. But that word, Banerry, that stops me every time. No one taught him that. No one trained him to combine words. When he saw an apple for the first time and said Banerry, cherry color outside, banana color inside, he was doing something that had never been documented in a non-primate species. He was creating. Now, I promised I'd be honest with you. And this is where I keep that promise. Not everyone accepted these findings. And the skeptics aren't wrong to push back. That's how science is supposed to work. The main criticism is this. What Pepperberg calls comprehension might still be very sophisticated pattern matching. Alex learned, over thousands of trials, which responses to produce in which contexts. And in a complex enough system of pattern matching, the output can look indistinguishable from understanding, without actually being understanding. This is the same debate that came up with Clever Hans, the famous horse in the early 1900s, whose owner claimed could do arithmetic. Turned out he was reading tiny, unconscious cues from the humans around him. Not doing math. Just reading us. Some critics raised the same possibility with Alex. Pepperberg has responses to these critiques, good ones, including the Banerry moment specifically, and the fact that Alex would sometimes give deliberately wrong answers when he was bored or frustrated, which implies he knew the right answer and chose not to give it. That's not conditioning. That's something stranger. But here's my honest read of the evidence. The debate isn't settled. What we can say, what the research clearly shows, is that the simple answer, it's just mimicry, there's no one home, is wrong. Something is happening. The question of exactly what to call it, that's still open. And I think that open question is more interesting than a closed one. Now, here's something I want to talk to directly. Some of you are watching this thinking about your own parrot. And you're wondering, is what my bird does closer to Alex, or closer to just sounds? Here's the honest answer. Most household parrots don't go through 30 years of structured research training. Alex's abilities were exceptional even among African greys, and Pepperberg was the first to say that. The other birds in her lab, including a parrot named Griffin who had years of similar training, was still working on concepts Alex had mastered by his early years. But here's what the research also shows. Even without structured training, parrots do develop contextual associations. They learn which words get reactions. They learn your name, your routine, your emotional patterns. They're not just playing a random sound tape. When your parrot says something and it fits the situation, that's not coincidence. That's a bird that has been paying extremely close attention to you. Mapping your patterns. Learning your language in the way that makes the most sense to them. Is it the same as Alex naming colors and shapes? Probably not. Is it nothing? Definitely not. There's a spectrum, and your bird is somewhere on it. The fact that you've noticed means you've been paying attention too. Let's go back to that lab at Brandeis University. September 6, 2007. The night before Irene Pepperberg left the lab, she went through their nightly routine. She told Alex it was time to go in the cage. And Alex said the same thing he said every single night when she left. "You be good. I love you. See you tomorrow." The next morning, Alex was found dead in his cage. He was 31 years old. An African gray can live to 50 or 60. Nobody expected it. When I first read about those last words, I thought about all the debate, the skeptics, the operant conditioning argument, the pattern matching critique. And then I thought, even if you accept the most skeptical possible interpretation, that Alex learned those words because saying them every night produced a consistent, rewarding response from the person he spent the most time with, what does that tell you? It tells you that he knew. He knew what happened when she left. He knew what words went with that moment. He knew her, in whatever way a walnut-sized brain can know someone, after 30 years. Maybe that's not language. Maybe it's not understanding the way we understand. But it's something. Something that took 10 million years of bird evolution and then 30 years of a woman's life to build. "You be good. I love you. See you tomorrow." He said it every night. He meant it in whatever way he could. And she never got to say it back. I want to hear about the moment your parrot said something that made you stop and think, they actually understand this. Not just a cute word. The moment that felt like genuine communication. Drop it in the comments. I read all of them. Every single one. And here's a question I genuinely don't know the answer to. Where do you think the line is between a bird learning that a sound gets a reaction and a bird actually meaning something when they say it? Because I've been thinking about that line for a while now, and I'm not sure it's as clear as I thought. See you in the next one.